I say the nuclear agreement, the Iran nuclear agreement, was the best way to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear-armed state. President Trump's refusal to recertify is a grave mistake that threatens America's security and our credibility at a very critical time. The president is ignoring the overwhelming consensus of nuclear scientists, national security experts, generals, and his own cabinet, including reportedly the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State. The fact is, Iran remains in compliance with the nuclear agreement. If they did not, we would not be supporting certification. If Iran were not in compliance, our allies would walk away. They are not. Supporters of the agreement harbor no illusions about the Iranian regime. That is why the agreement is based on proof, not trust. It has set up the toughest detection, inspection, and verification framework ever negotiated. Threatening this agreement does not isolate Iran. It isolates America. This week, House Democrats met with 4 European ambassadors, signatories to the agreement, who said if the U.S. backs out of the JCPOA, we will not. Even former Israeli Prime Minister and Defense Minister Ehud Barak said that abandoning the deal would be a mistake. He said, even if America decides to pull out of it, no one will join, not the Chinese, not the Russians, not even the Europeans. It will serve the Iranians, the president claimed. They are not agreeing to the spirit of the agreement. There is no spirit of the agreement. The agreement is a very toughly debated, negotiated, verifiable agreement. That's what they have to honor. And so far, his people who briefed me this morning, the person who called me from the administration, a high-level State Department official, I said very clearly, are they in violation of the agreement? No. So what are we doing here? Any questions?
Leader Pelosi?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you think of the Corker-Cotton proposed legislation that they're talking about?
I have the faintest idea what it is. What is Corker-Cotton?
They're proposing to amend the Iran Nuclear Review Act to, for example, instantly snap back sanctions if it's determined that Iran is within 1 year of developing a nuclear weapon, and to set a list of other stricter restrictions.
I'm not familiar with that, but the fact is they cannot amend the agreement. The agreement is an agreement not negotiated among ourselves. It's an agreement negotiated among nations. The entire EU, at the centerpiece of it, the P5, that is the members of the Security Council plus one, Germany, and then China and Russia, who are members of the P5, and EU, and Iran. So that's where the negotiation was, and they came out with the toughest agreement that was possible with that. I don't know what they're doing, but again, it is, if it's a path to leaving, we're saying if they're not in compliance, we're all together on this. We're out if they're not in compliance. So I really would have to read what they have, because I'll tell you this. Maybe you heard the president say in his comments, leaders in the Congress are working on language. We haven't seen any of it. We haven't seen any of it on the Democratic side. We haven't seen any of it.
It seems like President Trump views the CSR issue as a bargaining chip. And OMB Director Mulvaney, in a media interview, basically said so. Do you think it is something that he could use in negotiations? He seems to want, say, the wall or some other items on his agenda in the fall.
What you're saying is the president wants to negotiate the good health of the American people to get a wall between the U.S. and Mexico? No, that won't work. I mean, you should do the right thing. And the right thing is to respect what we're trying to do to bring health care to all Americans, as well as those with pre-existing medical conditions. I don't know what he wants. I mean, do you know what he wants? Do you know what the president wants? Yeah, I remember. But do you have any idea from his vision, his presentation, what he might want? A wall? An ineffective, immoral, expensive wall?
I know when I read in Politico, I was interviewed with Mr. Mulvaney.
Well, it just, let's all remain calm. Let's take a deep breath. Let's curb all of our enthusiasms. Let's do what is right for the American people. And let's do so in a way that is based on facts, evidence, data, truth, not spite, cruelty, and a wall when it comes to the health and well-being of the American people. Any other question? Yes, sir.
Yes, when you take a look at this week in totality, between the president laying out his demands on immigration, the Iran deal today, his steps he took on the Affordable Care Act, are we seeing some of the limits of what Democrats can do to stop his agenda, or on the flip side, the power that a president has, even if he can't get a bill through?
Well, I'm not even sure what he did yesterday was legal, and there will be others who will question that in the courts. But in the meantime, we have a way to remedy. I use that word specifically, to remedy what is needed for our the good health of the American people. And it's about the American people. That is the court of public opinion is the wisest court that there is. And I respect the president. He is the president of the United States. I respect the job that he holds, the position he holds. I respect the people who voted for him. I'm glad they voted. I'm just happy when people vote. But I do want them to know what it means in their lives when he goes off on a spiteful, cruel toot to diminish their access to affordable care. And this isn't about just people of lower income, but they do suffer. It's about the middle class being the hardest hit in all of this, and the taxpayer having to pay the price. So if it comes to how we meet the needs of the American people, how it impacts their economic well-being, and how it impacts the national debt, either the president is being ill-advised or somebody there doesn't know how to do the math. But this is a bad idea for everyone in our country, including the national budget and the debt. So in any event, again, I think we have to calmly approach this because we have to do this sanely. And I'll just go back to one thing because I keep using the word spite. Spite became very clear to all of us when the president announced that he was going to overturn the Affordable Care Act. He calls it Obamacare and not a complimentary way. I call it that in a complimentary way, but I call it the Affordable Care Act. When he said he was going to do it on the day that it became law. You don't bring anything to the floor in spite of somebody else, something that happened 7 years before. You bring it to the floor when you have the votes. And that was the beginning of the end of any legislative overturning of the Affordable Care Act. So now let's act in a respectful way to each other, recognizing the president has the signature, the Republicans have the majority, the American people have the voice, and we're here for their good health. Any other questions? No? Yes, sir.
Is Senator Murray keeping you informed on her work with Senator Alexander on health care? And do you have any idea how much progress they've made?
Senator Murray knows that we support her judgment, her values, and they are shared by House and Senate Democrats. So I have confidence in her as she proceeds.